The negotiating team that the Ukrainians sent to Riyadh was, on the face of it, a very, very powerful one. It's headed by their defense minister. There are some close aides of Zelensky himself. There are apparently lots of military officers joining the meeting. And they came to Riyadh for what was supposed to be a meeting between experts, American and Russian experts, to discuss the revival of the grain plan in the Black Sea. So clearly what the Ukrainians were trying to do is that they were trying to shift the negotiations, the discussions, to a completely different footing. I mean, you don't just send your defense minister, a whole pile of people like that, to discuss technical issues. You're trying to renegotiate, essentially, what Putin and Trump agreed with each other over the course of their recent telephone call. And it's quite clear what the Ukrainian agenda is. They want to move from this very limited ceasefire that we have at the moment, which is unsatisfactory to them. This, a ceasefire which places a hold on attacks on the respective energy systems for 30 days. They want to move beyond that, basically, I think, towards the Macron-Zelensky plan of a ceasefire, a cessation of all operations on the sea and in the air, which is intended to pave the way for a Western no-fly zone over Western Ukraine. So I think that is what they came for. After the meeting, they said absolutely nothing. The Ukrainians came away and were very silent about what they said. They said that, it'd been a good meeting and things had moved forward well, but they didn't say much more. The American officials were at a much lower technical level, people who work in the National Security Council and the State Department, middle-ranking officials. And I think they did not expect such a high-powered Ukrainian negotiating team. And I think they told the Ukrainians, we're not here to discuss these things. We are here to discuss how to secure the ceasefire on the attacks on the energy systems and how to revive the grain deal in the Black Sea. So I think the meeting didn't go especially well. Now, the main negotiations are taking place today. The Ukrainians have been told to stick around, and apparently they're still in Riyadh. The Russian negotiating team is pitched at the same level as the American one. And they've been speaking for several hours with the Americans. And there's been a break in the discussions. And the head of the Russian team, who's a man called Grigory Karasin, he came out and he said that, they've had a very creative discussion. All kinds of interesting ideas were floated. The two sides are maintaining contact with each other. All that suggests to me a very tough and difficult negotiation, and probably signs that, for the moment at least, not much progress is being made, both on the ceasefire over the energy systems and over the Black Sea issues as well.
The United States basically sitting across the table from the Ukrainian delegation and basically telling them, look, here's how this is going to unfold. This is what we're looking to get accomplished with Russia. This is what you guys need to accept. So take these terms back to Zelensky, get him to sign off on this, and let's move on to the next phase of their ceasefire roadmap. The talks seemed very, very short, 40 minutes. Yeah. At least those are the reports that we're getting. Yeah. And it was more about the U.S. just dictating terms to the Ukrainians in order to take back to Kiev and get Kiev to sign off on this. Well, I think the wild card, in my opinion, is that the United States, the Trump administration, is not ready to completely cut off Ukraine.
Yes.
They still have some weapons, from what I understand.
Yes.
From the Biden drawdown. Yes. From all of the packages that he put in place before he left office. You still have weapons flowing from that drawdown package, of which the Trump administration is just not touching. This is my understanding of things. And so they're allowing those weapons to go, and they're allowing Ukraine to remain on a type of they're drip feeding Ukraine on life support to continue to fight the war. Because for the Trump administration, the way I see it is as they're negotiating with the Russians, and that's what we're talking about, a proxy war. So it's the United States negotiating with Russia because those are the two parties that are at war. The United States, of course, is using Ukraine as a proxy. But the Trump administration, they need to keep the appearance, not only the appearance, the actual weapons flowing to Ukraine, because if they were to give that up, that would be too big of a card to give up to the Russians as you're trying to negotiate the best deal that you can as the United States. And so they're not ready to give up the weapons flow, the money flow to Ukraine just yet, because that would be just giving up perhaps the only leverage that you have at this point in time. You have this drawdown package from Biden and the threat that maybe you're going to continue to provide weapons after the drawdown is finished. And then you have the sanctions. That is the only leverage that the Trump administration has, at least with regards to Ukraine.
Now, there is, however, a problem because, yes, there is this continued flow of weapons left over from the Biden period, but apparently that runs out around the summer. So what at that point does Trump do? Does he go back to Congress and ask for a further appropriation of aid from Ukraine? Well, I think he could do that, but I think it'd be politically extremely embarrassing and very difficult to do this, given all that he said about that. I came away with the overwhelming impression that in Witkoff's mind, it's going to end with Istanbul Plus, that eventually the Americans are going to have to give the Russians what Putin is demanding, all of the 4 regions and all the other things that Putin basically is seeking. I can't interpret Witkoff's words in any other way, really. And if so, I think that the Americans don't obviously want to do this now, because doing that now would be massively embarrassing. It would look like a capitulation to Putin, to the Russians. So they need a kind of extended negotiation process. They need one ceasefire in the Black Sea, one ceasefire attacks on energy systems. They need a process on a final settlement. They need a meeting with Putin. And I think they ultimately need that process underway in order to arrive at that conclusion.
Putin's going to get criticized for not going all the way to Odessa.
Well, exactly.
He's going to get a huge amount of criticism for that.
Absolutely.
That's going to be a big problem for his administration. I don't know how they're going to explain it or how they're going to spin it. And more importantly, you had a high-ranking American official, one of the highest ranking American officials at the moment. He's Trump's ambassador envoy for Project Ukraine, saying, "I like Putin."
Yeah.
That's an incredible statement that I don't think I've ever heard in my entire life. For someone at this moment in time in the United States, so close to Trump, so close to the president, to say, "I like Putin." I mean, that just must have sent the shockwaves across the collective West.
When Witkoff talks about the fact that he liked Putin, what that means, and this is where I think the Europeans are going to become even more alarmed, it means that the administration is looking towards a longer term and good relationship with Putin and, of course, with Russia. And that is the most frightening thing for the Europeans of all. Around the same time that we're getting from the Russian media, from Kommersant, and it's also spreading right across, apparently, Russian regional media as well, comments from Putin himself about things that he said to the Industrialists Union in a closed meeting. Apparently he said to them, when we are absolutely going to stick by the June 2024 terms. We want the entire 4 regions transferred to us. We want that fact internationally recognized as well. And if we don't get it, we're going for Odessa, and not just Odessa, but other places too. So a very hardline position, told to absolutely top business people who are going to be making investment decisions based on what Putin is telling them. I mean, this just after Putin telling them also that he expects the sanctions to stay, because he's not going to sign a treaty which recognizes the four regions as Russian. I mean, that simply isn't going to happen. The Russians question whether he's even in a position to sign that treaty, because they've raised questions about his legitimacy. And the Russians today have, by the way, published a warning. You can find it in TASS, saying that Yulia Tymoshenko, who appears to be the person the Americans are thinking about as a potential replacement for Zelensky, that she's not really going to be able to do this either.